Hello, I just wanted to go over again one more time how to solve systems of equations using matrices. I know some of you have said that you've kind of been struggling with how to do this, and so I'll try and help you see my thought process too and when we're doing this. But before we solve this one, I want you to remember that there's 4 different things that we talked about that we can do when we're using matrices. We can multiply a row by any number except 0. We can add one of the rows to the other rows. We can multiply the rows by another row and then add those two together. And then we can switch rows. And so those are the 4 things that we can do. Those are the rules that we have when we're using matrices. So I'm just going to write up this in matrix form. I kind of use a little shortcut when I write it just so it doesn't take up so much room. And I'll show you what I do with that. So I'm going to have -3, -3, and then there's going to be a line here, and -15, right? So this separates what my x and y are and what my answer is. And then I also have a +1 down here, +3, and a +1. And what I do when I make this is I just kind of make this so that it extends down a ways. Oops, that does not look good. It's going kind of all skiwampus. Let me try again here. So if I have this and I want to go down, and then I just kind of make a line across there so I can see where one matrix ends and the other one begins. So remember, we want to get our matrix to look like the 1, 0, 0, 1. And so I notice right off the bat that I have a 1 down here in the bottom row, but I want to have it in the top row. So I'm going to use the rule where I can switch the 2 rows with each other. So that's all I'm going to do on this first step. Just switching the rows. Okay. And then I'll write my new matrix underneath this. So I have 1 in that place, and remember I said I'm going to get the 1, then go get the 0, then the 1 in the bottom right hand corner, and then the 0 up top. So I'm trying to get this -3 to become a 0. And so in order to do that, I can see, well, if I multiply the top row by a +3 and I add it to the -3, that will 0 it out. So I'm just going to write over here to the side what it is I'm doing. So I'm going to take 3 multiplied by row 1 and add it to row 2. And whatever I'm adding to is the one that is the row that is changing. So I'm going to leave my top row the same. I'm not doing anything with that. But my bottom row, I'm going to do 3 times 1 is 3. Added to that 3 gives me my 0, which I want. And then repeat it. Now I'm going to do 3 times 3 is 9. Minus 3 gives me 6. And then do it again. Don't forget about this last one. 3 times 1 is 3. Minus 15 gives me -12. Alright, so I've finished with that one. I'm going to make another one underneath it. So I've got my 1, my 0. Now I've got to get this to be a 1. And so oftentimes, making 1s are easiest by multiplying by the reciprocal. And so since I want it to be a +1 there, I'm going to take my row 2 and multiply it by 1/6, which is essentially the same thing as dividing by 6, but technically with matrices, division is not allowed. So we'll just say we're going to multiply it by 1/6. That will give us the same result there. So now my top row staying the same. I didn't change anything on that. Changing stuff in my next row. So now I'm going to do 1/6 times 0 is 0. 1/6 times 6 is 1. 1/6 times -12 is -2. Alright, so I can see that I finished that bottom row completely because I have it looking the way I want it to. So I can already tell that my y, my answer for y, is -2. Okay, but let's complete it because we need to figure out what x is as well. So I'm going to just write down my bottom row because I know I'm not going to change anything in that. And then think about how would I change this 3 to become a 0. Hopefully you thought about multiplying this row by -3 and then adding it to 3. That's what's going to give us that 0. So I'm going to say I'm going to do -3, -3 times row 2 plus row 1. Alright, so when I do that, -3 times 0 is 0 plus 1 is 1. So see how that 1 didn't change? We don't want it to change. -3 times 1 is -3 plus 3 gives us our 0, which was what we want there. -3 times -2 is +6 plus 1 gives us 7. So now that I have it all in this form, I can see here that my x is 7 and my y is -2. And those are my solutions. Okay, you could also write those as ordered pairs as 7, -2. Make sure if you write it as an ordered pair that you always have your x first and your y second. Alright, I hope that is helpful in working on some more problems that you have to do with matrices.